Hi friends, happy Thursday. Welcome back to our Read Aloud for today. We're going to continue hitting that learning target of being able to answer questions about apples. That is helping us to know the main idea of apples and help grow our schema. So we can do that with fiction and nonfiction texts. We're learning using nonfiction texts about apples so that we can learn facts. So we already read How Do Apples Grow by Betsy Moore and completed our charts to help us know the information that we learned combined with the information that we already know. But we're also going to read a new book that says the same title, How Do Apples Grow? This book is by Betsy Maestro, so a different author. So this lady wrote the words, but it's illustrated by Giulio Maestro. So it's illustrated by a different person, which means the illustrations in here are drawn by somebody other than Betsy, the person who wrote the words. So this is also a nonfiction text, but you're going to see pictures in here instead of photographs. You're also going to hear information that we already learned about apples, and then you're also probably going to hear some new information, okay? So I want you to keep your schema right here for apples, ready to listen, ready to build on it, and ready to draw from it. Here we go. How do apples grow? Here's our title page. You can see it's the same words, how do apples grow, but a different picture clue about what we're going to learn. What do you think those trees are? I can infer probably apple trees, right? And here is where our information begins. When you bite into a juicy apple, you're eating part of a flower. Fruit comes from flowers. What do we call the type of flower from the apple tree? An apple blossom. Good. In winter, an apple tree is bare, so it has no leaves on it. It's hard to imagine it covered with flowers or fruit, but even in the cold and snow, tiny leaf buds and flower buds are waiting to open. Inside each leaf bud are tiny curled up leaves. Inside each flower bud are all the parts of an apple flower. So here they have a label with the picture showing us where the buds are. Apple flowers are pink and white and sweet to smell, and each flower is the beginning of an apple. So wherever the flowers are on that tree is where the apples will be. When spring comes, there are more hours of sunlight. The days are longer and warmer. The leaf buds open. Tiny green leaves appear on each twig. When the apple tree is covered with leaves, the flower buds begin to open. Up close, you can see bunches of small pink and white flowers at the end of each twig. Each flower can become an apple, but all the right things must happen first. An apple flower has many parts and each has a special job to do. So this is a picture of apple flower buds, and then this is sepals. This is called sepals, what the lines are pointing through. Around the outside are the sepals. They form a little cup to protect the rest of the flower. As the flower blossoms, the sepals open too. The pretty colored petals and sweet flowery smell bring many insects and birds to the apple tree. These animal helpers are needed for flowers to make fruit. So they've labeled more of the flower. This says this is our flower petal right here, and then the sepals are opening. This is when the sepals are closed, and this is when it's opened. Inside each flower are the different parts that make a new apple grow. So this information, there's a lot of bigger vocabulary words in it, but for what we need to know, we've learned about the blossoms and inside the flower. What comes from the flower is the apple. Okay, so we're just going to take a look at the picture. Sometimes in nonfiction text too, you don't have to read every single word like a story, because if you've already learned that information, it's good to read it again But you can also skip because the order of it doesn't always matter, like in a fictional text. So I'm going to skip to the next part since we don't need for what we're learning to learn every single part of the flower, the name of it. An apple can grow when the different parts of it join and the flower is fertilized. This sounds easy, but it's not. The apple flower can be fertilized only by pollen from a different apple tree. Since apple trees can't move, they can't carry the pollen themselves, so they need helpers to do this. Who do you think helps carry the pollen? If you've ever seen the bee movie, you probably know those insects and birds. Look at the bees. Bees are some of the apple tree's best helpers. Bees are attracted to the colorful petals of the flowers. They like the smell of the sweet flower juice and nectar. Bees fly from tree to tree collecting nectar. They will use the nectar to make honey. As the bees gather nectar, pollen grains stick to their bodies. When they land on the flowers of other apple trees, some of this pollen falls off. So the bees are the ones that help the pollen, help transfer the pollen, which means help carry it. The pollen lands on the sticky tops of the flower. Now the petals fall to the ground and they're no longer needed. They have done their job. So after the flower is pollinated, then the flower petals fall to the ground and they're no longer needed. The flower has been fertilized. Now an apple will begin to grow and it will grow right at the spot where the flower meets the stem. So this is where the apple will start to grow. Very, very cool. Look at the bottom of a ripe apple. You can see bits of the dried sepals from the flower. So the sepal is what we saw on the first few pages, where it's closed up and then it starts to open. At the bottom of the apple, you can still see that. When the apple's cut open, you can see the seeds. Look carefully, and you will see 5 little compartments or sections. There may be as many as 10 seeds inside your apple. The seeds are fertilized. Apple seeds can grow into new apple trees. The apple tree must feed the growing apples. By using sunlight, water, and air, the leaves make a special kind of sugar. This sugar feeds the fruit. It takes about 50 leaves to make the sugar for 1 apple. Wow, that's a lot of leaves. All summer long, the apples grow bigger and riper. So this is showing us a picture of the summertime. When fall arrives, the apples are almost ripe. During the last few days, the apples can feed themselves. They make their own sugar now, and the sugar makes the apples sweet. So these are different kinds of apples. Sunlight helps the leaves and apples to make food. It also helps change the skin color of some of the apples. Different kinds of apples have different skin colors. Some turn red and others turn yellow. Some varieties of apples stay green even when they are ripe. So this is the Red Delicious apple. This is called a Macintosh. This is a Golden Delicious, and this is a Granny Smith. We always like to do a good taste testing too to see what our favorites are. When the apples are ripe, it is time for picking. If no one picks the apples, they will fall to the ground. Animals will eat some of them and may carry the apple seeds to other places. Some of these seeds will grow into new apple trees. Some of the apples may just rot on the ground. After a while, they will become part of the soil. They will help feed the tree. As fall ends, the trees lose their leaves. New buds are already forming. They will be next year's apples. For now, the apple tree's work is over. For you, it's time for the best part. It's apple eating time. All right, let's give that book a thumbs up. So this is also another nonfiction text about how apples grow. But as you heard, there's a little bit more detail in this text, And that's also why we skipped past some of it, because they were telling us information and using very big words that our schema is not ready to learn yet. So we skipped past some of the labeling parts of the flower and the blossom. But something new that we learned was about insects and their role in helping the flowers grow. What insect did we see in here that helped move the pollen? The bees. Very good. So we'll keep adding to our schema of apples this week. And this is all we're going to do is read and learn, read and learn. And I hope you guys are really enjoying it, because hopefully very soon we'll get to do some fun things with our apple theme. All right, friends, have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow for our next Read Aloud.